Before start a video, please subscribe my YouTube channel for more videos. The night was dark, heavy with rain. On the busy streets of New York, people rushed under their umbrellas, eager to escape the storm. But among the flashing lights and roaring traffic, a man in a black limousine suddenly froze. Inside sat Alexander Grant, a billionaire known for his power, charm, and ruthless business empire. He had everything: money, influence, respect. Yet that night, all of it seemed to fade away, because at the corner of the street, soaked to the bone, stood a young woman clutching two fragile twins. Her clothes were torn, her hands trembling, and her eyes, though tired, held a fire of dignity. Alexander's heart skipped a beat. He knew that face. 10 years ago, one night, a waitress who had changed his life without him realizing. She had vanished after that night, leaving only a memory. And now, here she was, begging for food in the rain, two little children at her side. Questions crashed inside him. Were those children his? Why hadn't she come to him? Why was she suffering while he thrived? The billionaire, who thought he controlled every piece of his empire, suddenly realized there was a part of his past he could never control, and it was staring back at him in the cold rain. And in that instant, Alexander knew. His life was about to change forever. The rain was relentless, pouring down as if the heavens themselves were weeping. Inside his sleek limousine, Alexander Grant's phone buzzed with constant notifications from board members and investors. Yet his sharp, calculating eyes were fixed outside the tinted glass. There she was, standing under a flickering streetlight, drenched, trembling, holding two fragile children close to her chest. Her thin arms shielded them from the storm, though her own body shook with the cold. The children's faces were pale, their eyes searching the crowd for kindness that never came. Alexander's breath caught. His mind spun back to a decade ago, a night of laughter, vulnerability, and unexpected warmth in a small-town diner where a waitress had shown him more genuine care in a few hours than anyone in his billion-dollar world ever had. He had left that town the next morning, convinced it was just a fleeting moment. Now, seeing her again, his chest tightened with guilt and disbelief. Why didn't she reach out? Why was she here, reduced to begging? The driver glanced back. "Sir, should I keep going?" Alexander's lips parted, but no words came. His empire meant nothing at this moment. The only thing that mattered was the woman outside, and the two children clinging desperately to her sides. He had no idea that stepping out of that car would unravel secrets buried for 10 long years. The limousine door swung open, and Alexander stepped into the downpour. Rain immediately plastered his tailored suit against his body, but he didn't care. Each step toward her felt heavier, as if carrying the weight of the past 10 years. The woman, Emily, looked up. Her lips trembled, her soaked hair clinging to her pale face. For a second, disbelief flickered in her eyes, then fear, then something colder. Recognition. "Emily," Alexander whispered, his voice almost drowned by the rain. Her jaw tightened. She pulled the twins closer, as though protecting them from him. "Don't, please, don't come closer." His chest tightened. "Why are you here like this? You should have told me." Emily shook her head, her voice breaking. "Told you? Do you think people like me get heard by men like you? You left. Alexander, you didn't look back." The twins shivered against her. One of them, a little boy, coughed weakly, his small frame trembling. Alexander's gaze fell on him, then on the girl, both with eyes hauntingly familiar. His own eyes. His breath caught. The truth slammed into him like thunder. "They're mine, aren't they?" he asked, his voice shaking for the first time. "In years." Emily's silence said more than words ever could. She looked away, tears mixing with the rain. In that moment, the billionaire who had conquered industries and commanded empires felt utterly powerless, because the only thing he truly wanted had been kept from him for a decade. The storm raged on, but Alexander barely felt it. His world had narrowed to the fragile woman and the two children who now seemed to carry his very soul in their eyes. "Emily," he said firmly, "you don't have to live like this anymore. Come with me. I'll take care of you." Of them. Her laugh was sharp, bitter, nothing like the warm sound he remembered. "Take care of us? Now? After 10 years?" She shook her head, clutching the twins tighter. "I've managed this long without you. I don't need your pity." "It's not pity," he argued, his voice cracking through the rain. "It's responsibility. My responsibility." Her eyes burned with a mixture of anger and pain. Responsibility? Where was that responsibility when I was working double shifts at the diner, pregnant and terrified? Where was it when I had to choose between feeding myself or buying medicine for them? You don't just get to appear out of nowhere and play savior, Alexander. The little girl looked up at her mother, confusion in her wide eyes. "Mommy, who is he?" Emily froze. The question lingered in the air like a dagger. She bit her lip, trembling, torn between truth and protection. Alexander's heart ached. He knelt in the mud, leveling his gaze with the children. "I'm someone who should have been here a long time ago." Emily's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "You don't understand, Alexander. Being near you isn't safe. For me, for them. That's why I stayed away." Her words struck deeper than any insult. Not safe? What could have been so dangerous that she chose suffering over reaching out to him? The billionaire who always had. Answers now stood in the rain, confronted with questions he didn't know if he wanted the answers to. The rain slowed to a drizzle, but the storm between them only grew heavier. Emily's arms trembled from holding the twins, yet her eyes stayed fierce, daring Alexander to push further. "Not safe?" he repeated, confusion lacing his voice. "Emily, what do you mean? I would have protected you with everything I had." Her lips curled into a pained smile. "That's what you think, but you don't know your world, Alexander. Not like I do." "My world?" She took a shaky breath, her voice breaking as long-buried memories clawed their way out. "The night after that night, I went back to work at the diner. Do you remember your business partner, Richard Hale?" Alexander's stomach twisted. Hale, the man who had once been like a brother, before Alexander discovered his betrayal years later. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "He came to the diner looking for you. He saw me, recognized me, and followed me home. He said he knew about us. He warned me never to go near you again, or he'd make sure my life, and my children's lives, would be destroyed before they even began." Alexander's blood ran cold. "He threatened you?" Emily nodded, her tears finally spilling. "I was just a waitress, Alexander. I had nothing. No power, no voice. I believed him. And when the twins were born, I couldn't risk it. Not with his shadow hanging over me." Rage thundered inside Alexander, fiercer than the storm itself. Hale was gone from his company, but the damage he left behind was still haunting them 10 years later. Alexander reached out, his hands trembling. "Emily, you should have told me. You shouldn't have carried this alone." She stepped back, shaking her head. "I couldn't trust you then. You belonged to a world that devoured people like me." The twins clung to her, their innocent eyes darting between their mother and the man who had just been revealed as part of their story. For the first time in his life, Alexander Grant felt powerless. Not because of money, not because of business, but because the woman he loved had lived in fear of his very world. And now, he had to prove to her that the world she feared no longer controlled him. Alexander's fists clenched at his sides, rain dripping from his hair, but his eyes never left Emily's. The fear etched in her face, the trembling of her lips, the way she held the twins as if shielding them from him. It tore through him deeper than any boardroom betrayal ever could. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Emily, I can't change what Hale did to you. I can't undo the years you suffered. But I swear to you, those days are over. No one will ever threaten you or our children again." She flinched at the word "our," but he pressed on. "You think my world devours people like you? Then let me build a new one where you don't have to fear. A world where you and these kids are safe, where you belong." Her eyes flickered, torn between disbelief and longing. She wanted to trust him. He could see it. But a decade of scars ran deep. "Words are easy for a man like you," Emily said bitterly. "You've probably made promises to 1,000 people who never mattered in the end." Alexander shook his head fiercely. "You mattered. From the very beginning, you mattered more than you'll ever know. That night, I never forgot. And seeing you now, like this, Emily, I'd trade every dollar I've ever earned if it meant you'd never suffer a single day." One of the twins sneezed, shivering against her. Emily's resolve faltered. Her children needed warmth, food, safety, things she couldn't provide tonight. Alexander saw the crack in her walls. Gently, he removed his coat and draped it around. Her shoulders then bent to shield the children with it as well. "Please," he whispered, desperation raw in his tone. "Come with me. Just tonight. For them. Not for me." Emily hesitated, eyeing the sleek vehicle like it was a trap. But the sight of cushioned warmth inside, a safe space away from the storm, pushed her forward. She guided the children in first, seating them carefully. Their wide eyes lit up at the plush seats, a small gasp escaping the boys' lips. Emily climbed in last, keeping them close as if Alexander might still try to steal them away. Alexander entered opposite them, drenched but silent, his eyes never, leaving the fragile picture before him. The woman he once loved, the children he had just discovered, bundled in his coat inside his car. The car moved through the city, but inside the air was thick with unspoken words. One of the twins, the little girl, tilted her head curiously. "Mommy, is he our daddy?" Emily froze, her heart pounding in her ears. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Alexander leaned forward, his voice soft but steady. "Yes, I am. And I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." The boy frowned, studying him with cautious eyes. "Will you leave again?" The question cut through Alexander like a blade. He swallowed hard. "Never, not again." Emily turned her face away, blinking back tears. She didn't believe promises easily, but deep inside, a small part of her wanted to. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry this burden alone anymore. The limousine pulled through, towering iron gates, and wound up a long, tree-lined driveway. At the end stood Alexander's mansion, an estate that looked more like a palace, its lights glowing against the wet night. Emily stiffened, clutching the twins' hands tighter. The grandeur didn't impress her. It terrified her. She had spent years surviving in cramped apartments, hiding in shelters, taking shifts at diners. This world of wealth was the very thing she had run from, a reminder of the power that once threatened to crush her. When the driver opened the door, the twins gasped, their small voices echoing with awe. "Mommy, it's like a castle," the little girl whispered. Emily forced a smile for them but felt her stomach twist. "Remember, it's just for tonight," she murmured. Inside, the mansion was warm, filled with polished marble, soft rugs, and chandeliers that sparkled like captured stars. Servants rushed forward, but Alexander held up a hand, dismissing them. "No staff tonight," he said firmly. "They don't need an audience." He led Emily and the twins into a cozy sitting room instead of the grand hall, where a fire crackled, softly. He offered towels and blankets, his every movement careful, as though afraid one wrong gesture might send Emily fleeing again. The twins huddled near the fire, their cheeks glowing with warmth for the first time in weeks. Emily stood apart, her arms crossed, watching Alexander with guarded eyes. "You don't have to do this," she said sharply. "One night of pity won't erase 10 years." Alexander met her gaze, pain flickering across his face. "This isn't pity. Emily, I'm not letting you go back to the streets. Not you, not them. I failed you once. I won't do it again." The boy looked up from the fire, curiosity shining in his eyes. "Mommy, why does he care so much?" Emily's lips parted, but no answer came. Her throat tightened as she realized the truth she'd been avoiding. Alexander wasn't the man she remembered from 10 years ago. He was different, softer, steadier, maybe even broken by the years apart. Still, she whispered the only words she could manage. "Because he should have cared a long time ago." The fire crackled softly, filling the room with a golden glow. Emily sat stiffly on the edge of a chair, her eyes darting between the twins and Alexander, waiting for him to slip, to show the arrogance of the billionaire she remembered. But instead, she saw something she hadn't expected. Alexander knelt on the carpet beside the twins, handing them mugs of warm cocoa the chef had quickly prepared. He wasn't distant or commanding. He was gentle, clumsy even, as he tried to balance the mugs without spilling. The little girl giggled. "You don't know how to hold it right," she teased. Alexander smiled sheepishly, adjusting his grip. "You're right. Maybe you should teach me." The boy eyed him suspiciously. "Are you really our dad?" Alexander's heart clenched. He set the mug down and looked the boy straight in the eye. "Yes, and I'm sorry I wasn't here when you needed me. But if you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I should be." The boy studied him for a long moment, then leaned against his sister. Slowly, he sipped his cocoa, as if testing Alexander's words in silence. Emily watched, her chest tight. She wanted to interrupt, to remind Alexander that trust wasn't earned in a single night. But the sight of her children smiling without worry for the first time in years, stilled her tongue. Later, as the twins curled up under blankets, near the fire, their eyelids drooping, Alexander gently covered them. His hands lingered, trembling slightly as though he feared the moment was only a dream. He turned to Emily then, his voice raw. "I missed their whole childhood. Their first steps, their first words, all gone. But if you let me, I'll be here for everything else." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to stay strong, to keep her walls high. Yet, as she looked at her children, safe, warm, and finally at peace, something inside her cracked. For the first time in years, she whispered, softly, almost to herself, maybe it doesn't have to be just me anymore." The next morning, soft sunlight spilled through the wide windows of the mansion. Emily woke to the faint sound of laughter echoing down the hall. Her heart raced, her children's laughter. She hadn't heard it sound so free in years. She followed the sound, still wary, and found Alexander in the kitchen. The billionaire, the man the world knew as ruthless and untouchable, stood at the counter awkwardly flipping pancakes, his expensive shirt dusted with flour. The twins sat at the bar, cheering him on as if he were a hero. "Mom, he almost dropped one." The girl laughed. Alexander grinned, turning to Emily with flour streaked on his cheek. "You didn't tell me they were food critics." Emily crossed her arms, trying not to smile. "They get it from me." He grew serious for a moment, wiping his hands. "Emily, I know I failed you before. I walked away without understanding the weight of what I was leaving behind. But I don't want to fail again, not as a father, and not with you." Emily's defenses rose instantly. "Don't make promises you can't keep, Alexander. My kids don't need more broken words." He stepped closer, his tone steady, vulnerable. Then let me prove it. I don't want to buy your forgiveness with money, and I don't expect you to trust me overnight. But I'll show up, day after day, until you see I mean it. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Emily's eyes softened despite herself. She wanted to believe him, but years of loneliness and hardship still weighed heavy. Finally, she whispered, "Words are easy, Alexander. Actions. Actions will decide." The twins tugged at her sleeves, smiling wide. "Mom, can we stay here a little longer? Please?" Emily hesitated, then nodded slowly. "For now." Alexander exhaled, relief flashing across his face. It wasn't victory, but it was a beginning. Later that week, Emily cautiously returned to her waitressing job at the small diner. She didn't want charity, and she refused to rely on Alexander's money. But when she stepped inside, she froze. The diner was buzzing with noise, customers chatting, plates clattering, coffee pouring, and in the middle of it all, wearing a plain apron, was Alexander, the billionaire, behind the counter, taking orders. Emily's jaw dropped. "What? What are you doing here?" Alexander grinned sheepishly as he balanced two trays. "Learning. What you've been carrying all these years. If I'm going to prove I can stand beside you, I need to understand your world, not drag you into mine." Emily blinked, stunned. The staff whispered, the customers gawked. Nobody could believe the man who owned skyscrapers and private jets was wiping tables and refilling coffee cups. Her manager chuckled nervously. "He said he wanted to work for free. I didn't dare say no." For the first time in years, Emily's chest tightened not with anger, but with something far more dangerous. Hope. After the rush slowed, she found Alexander in the back, sleeves rolled up, sweat dripping down his temples. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Yes, I do," he replied, his voice steady, "because every time I walked away from something difficult, I lost a piece of myself. And I lost you. I'm done running." Emily looked at him for a long moment. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire, but the man beneath, the one she had fallen for 10 years ago. Still, she crossed her arms. "One day doesn't erase 10 years, Alexander." "I know," he whispered, meeting her eyes. "But it's a start." And for the first time, Emily didn't walk away. The next day, Emily walked her twins, Lily and Daniel, home from school. The rain had just stopped, leaving puddles glistening along the cracked sidewalks. As they turned the corner, the children froze. There, kneeling on one knee, was Alexander, waiting with 2 paper bags in his hands. Inside were warm sandwiches and little boxes of crayons. The twins' eyes lit up. Lily gasped. "You remembered I like the purple crayon." "And you got me the superhero one," Daniel shouted, hugging the box tightly. Emily frowned. "You didn't have to," but Alexander cut her off, his eyes soft. "They deserve more than scraps, Emily. I know money doesn't fix everything, but love, attention, I can give them that too." The twins didn't hesitate. They wrapped their small arms around him, their laughter echoing down the street. For a moment, Alexander closed his eyes, holding them as though making up for 10 lost years. Emily stood frozen. She had worked so hard to protect her children from disappointment, from false promises. Yet here was the man who had once abandoned her, now kneeling in the mud, smiling wider than she'd ever seen. Later that night, Lily whispered to her mother, "Mommy, can he stay for dinner? Just once." Emily's heart ached. She glanced at Alexander, who was quietly fixing the broken leg of their old dining chair without being asked. She sighed. Just once. And as they sat around the chipped table, sharing a simple meal of soup and bread, it didn't feel like a billionaire eating with a poor waitress. It felt like a family. Weeks passed, and Alexander kept showing up. Not with gifts, but with actions. He fixed the leaking roof of Emily's tiny home. He walked the twins to school in the mornings. He even stood by her side at the diner, washing dishes and joking with the staff. But one evening, as the golden sun sank behind the horizon, Emily's past fears returned. She pulled Alexander aside in the small garden behind the house. "You've been here for weeks," she said softly. "The kids adore you. But how do I know you won't disappear again?" Alexander's eyes held a rare vulnerability. "Because I finally know what it means to be poor, Emily. Not poor in money, but poor in love. And I'll never survive losing you again." Her heart pounded. Still, she hesitated. That night, as she tucked in the twins, Daniel whispered, "Mommy, are you scared he'll leave?" Emily's throat tightened. "Maybe a little." Lily reached for her hand. "But sometimes people change, and maybe he came back because he was always meant to be our daddy." Tears blurred Emily's vision. Children often saw truths adults refused to believe. The next morning, she made her decision. She walked into the diner where Alexander was already in an apron, balancing plates. Without a word, she crossed the floor, cupped his face, and kissed him. The room fell silent. Plates clattered. Customers stared. When she pulled back, her voice trembled. "I don't want a billionaire. I don't want a prince. I just want the man who showed up every day, even when it was hard." Alexander's eyes glistened. "Then you have him. Forever." From that day forward, they weren't Billionaire and Waitress anymore. They were a family, scarred but stronger, broken but rebuilt. And 10 years after that rainy night, love finally won.